The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure, not even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. And as they went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. And when they had crossed over, they came to a land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. And when they got out of the boat, people at once recognized them and rushed about that whole region and began to bring back the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. How many of you have dogs? Raise your hand. How many of those dogs are long-haired? Raise your hand. How many of you during the summer shave them bald? Those long-haired dogs. Come on. Many of you know, Pastor Woody loves them, by the way, that I have 2 Shih Tzus. Keiko is black, 18 pounds, has a thick coat, double, and very difficult to brush, but it gets done. Yoshi weighs 8 pounds, 9 actually, and has just 1 layer of coat, so it's easy to brush her and get the mats out, and she's a pleasure. Well, lately, I have not been brushing my Keiko, the really hairy one, very often enough. Why? Well, you can imagine. Herbert's still hobbling around. He needs attention. And mother, please, my mother, she needs attention. And there's the garden, and there's the weeding, and there's the shopping, and of course there's Pastor Woody, It's hard. So I've been letting it go. But finally, after I picked her up last week, and I could feel these lumps and mats underneath, I said, Maritza, you got to get your act together. There's got to be an easy way to do this. Lord, help me. So I went on Google. Google's awesome. And I started putting in words: shearing, mats, hair, too much. And up pops this picture, which I had seen a number of years ago, but you don't really pay attention to it. I see it a lot on Pinterest. And I started reading, and I wrote it down, and I'm going to tell you about it. And it's a true story, and it did happen, and this sheep, a merino sheep, is now in heaven with the other sheep, but this sheep got away from his shepherd. This was in New Zealand. For 6 years, he would hide. The shepherd would go out to get all the sheep and would call and bang, whatever they do to bring them back in, but this sheep refused to come back in. So for 6 years in New Zealand, he lived in caves, and they couldn't get him. But one day, 6 years after he disappeared, they found him, they caught him, and they brought him back in. He had 60 pounds, probably more, of a wool on his body. He looked like this big, giant ball of yarn. And I can't imagine what it felt like to walk and to carry 60 pounds of extra weight. I can't imagine the bugs that were underneath. I can't imagine sort of the irritation, the pain, when you can't get to a scratch. Because I watch Keiko. When she can't get to a scratch, it's crazy. So the sheep, they shaved off all the hair, and actually it's called shorn or shearing, and weighed 60 pounds, and he was happy. And so as I'm brushing my dog, and she's fussing and carrying on, and she's yakking and carrying on, I thought about this story. And I thought about what it feels like to carry the weight of the day on your shoulders, inside of you, in your body. And to walk with this weight day in and day out. There's only like a second in the morning when you wake up when you're not thinking of anything and you feel light. The minute you put that foot on the floor and go to take your morning tinkle, it comes all flooding back and you start feeling the weight. Now, this may not happen to you every single day, but tell me that's not the truth. That oftentimes we do feel like, Lord, how much more? I can't do this. I'm tired. I am weary. And there's some folks who don't even know that they're carrying this weight of pain, of a sense of lostness, of no direction, but they live this way day in and day out without relief. So like this merino sheep, I think of Christ as that shepherd. Psalm 23 is my favorite psalm in the entire Bible. I love the Psalms, but this psalm in particular speaks to me about a way of living, a God who walks with us, even when we stray and don't know we're straying, even when we forget to listen to his voice and go back to him. It's easier to just go about your busy day and not think about what you need to do to keep yourself, your soul, your mind healthy. It's easier just to keep putting it off, to sit and be quiet and be silent with God and to pray. I know, I do it all the time. And then when I can't carry the weight any longer, I sit down. I'll read the scriptures. I'll pray. I'll call up that friend. And it starts lifting off. It's like someone took a pair of scissors, see? Show and tell. Like that day I got my hair cut and I felt like a brand new woman. It was down here. It was just too much. And I felt so light. The funny thing about all of this is that it happens all the time. No matter how often you know what you need to do, we inevitably get way down again with troubles, which may be true or not, or all in your head or not, real or not. And yet, if we heed the call that's always, always calling us back, always present, always there to help you, always there to walk with you in that pain and in that weariness, it really lightens you up. We're going to have lemonade after the service today. We may have it in a narthex if it's raining out there. But I've always thought of lemonade as something light and bright and cool, not too sweet, but with lots of ice, and it just makes me feel lovely. And when I listen to the Lord, when I stop depending on me and carry my weight and give it to God, I feel light. It's like drinking a cup of cool lemonade in the middle of this sweltering summer. My dog will not get sheared. She looks gorgeous with her long hair. I will make it a habit of brushing her every day. I don't promise it's going to happen every day, but how about every other day? And I will continue to turn to the Lord every time the weariness just creeps up. Actually, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to stay in bed an extra minute and just ponder about that quietness and that peace that was just there before the day begins. Our readings are all about turning to the Lord. Our readings about finding health and finding alivio. Alivio means take it away, even if just for a little bit, for a little while. And it only happens when you stop and let God do God's wonderful work in you. And not once or twice or 3 times. It's just a continuous thing. It will always have to be done every single day, every time you take a breath, every time you take a step. That's how it is. These sheep needed to be shorn, S-H-O-R-N, once a year. And you need God not once a year, or only on Sundays, or only at Easter or Christmas, but every single breathing moment. You're God's creature. You need your source of power. This is a good time to speak about this because the summer's hot. There's much going on in our church. COVID is kind of petering down, but then we have all these other things that are coming up. Things have changed and never will be the same again. And it can tire you out, and it can give you the jitters, and it can, Lord, why can't it just be the way it was? Because it can't. Because it won't be. Because it is what it is, and yet God's with you. Our reading today speaks about people who saw Jesus and they ran to him. And I wonder if they're like us. We get a quick fix, and then we just keep on going about our business until it just gets unbearable again. Lord, help us to stay in your presence daily, because you're always there for us. And you never abandon us. And even if we come to you weighed down with 60 pounds of grief and sadness, you will help us cut it off. And if we forget, you will remind us. But help us to stay close to you. Now, how can you share this with others? How can you bring the good news that there is a God who loves us? You can be that shoulder or that person who can listen to others. You can also be that person who gives that other a cool glass of lemonade and remind them that they are loved, that they are precious, and that God is with them. Amen.